So this is my module for week 4, Future of Cities, and this week is all about economy of cities. Let's jump right into it. Since the very first survey that we took in this class, I've said the same thing, and I love cities. I think cities are fascinating. I think they're something you can study forever. But at their core, cities are economic machines. Cities provide opportunity for people, and the opportunity is usually job driven. People come to cities to work for jobs. In turn, they end up producing, and within their jobs, the city provides, and then they produce, which builds the economy, and the growing economy brings in more people. That's how the economy of a city works. That's what drives people. That's why people live in cities. Economy. Um, so the growing economy attracts people. That's just what it does. Through this process of growing economy, economics shape cities. They just do. It shapes how a city grows socially, how it grows through geography, and this has always been the way. Dating back to far before pre-industrial days and early days of civilization, people would gather where all the merchants were. The merchants would build the economy of a large group, which would turn into an early city, and this was how society kind of evolved. Now, traditionally in cities, back in the old early day of cities, there was a structure where the wealthy, the elites, would live at the core of the city, and surrounding that, the further away you got from the wealthy core of the city, the less wealthy people would be, going from wealthy people but not the elites, and then maybe the less affluent, and then the poor farmers in the outskirts of the city. But that was the way it was for a while. But when cities industrialized, economics adjusted the social geography of how cities were and how they acted. Um, so instead of the elites being in the center of the city, factories started to pop up, and the elite wealthy people wanted to get away from not only the smells and stench of the factory life, but they also wanted to remove themselves from the poor working class people who lived in close proximity to these factories. Because housing would pop up all around the factories for the blue collar, the working class, so they could easily get to work at their factory jobs. And this was kind of the beginning of when we could really classify neighborhoods having status symbols. Uh, People would start to care or recognize at least which community, like how much you had to pay rent in this community, how much rent was in this community, and neighborhood wealth status started to matter, at least a little bit. Um, and then obviously through there was many things that popped up over many philosophies that came into effect during industrialization. Towards the end of it, the Fordist system, which perpetuated through Henry Ford and the things that he brought to the table, it ended up bringing consumption and production together gradually, but eventually. Now, this system of industrialization um, didn't last forever. It couldn't. When things modernized, and the Neo-Fordism system of economics came around, which is led us to where modern cities are today. It brought us yet another social geographical shift. Inner cities saw massive deindustrialization. Factories started coming down, and instead of being in the center of the factories, might be on the side, not where the prominent downtown was. In Western countries, at least, because what happened at the time is instead of building our own materials here in our own cities, we started saying, "Oh, how about we have a country that's not developed to produce things for us, or something we don't care in the not in the Western world at least." It's one of those things like you don't know where your iPhone was made, you don't know where your computer was made. It was made, but we don't have to worry about that in our cities anymore, which is another problem, but not for today. So anyway, through this Neo-Fordism system, new, more high-tech companies took their place, like technology companies. Think of Silicon Valley in California. I'm from Massachusetts. There's tons of technology, cybersecurity companies up there, and this brought around edge cities. It started to make these cities weren't in the center of anything anymore, but they started to create edge cities around them. They would pop up large communities and suburbs that might be close to where these new factories are located would drastically change. And many different ways, some for better, some for worse. This sort of brought around the boom of gated communities and with extensive security measures to keep out undesirables who might be in close proximity now that there's a growing, the geography is changing, the where people are living is changing. And all this history of social geographical movement post-industrialization era has led to globalization. It's a it is a worldwide thing, and the globalization in itself has led to many effects in the urban social geography. One of them being the creation of world cities. World cities are command centers where a lot of the biggest economic players are. These cities kind of run the world's economy. Some examples in New York City or Tokyo. Now the bad side of these is they're they're not all bad, but there is some bad sides, such as the social polarization, and you see stark contrast in wealth quality. There's some very, very rich businessman working and living right next to someone who's much poorer than they are in close proximity, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but it is a bit unequal. So, to switch gears a little bit, just to kind of wind this down, I want to discuss the virus a little bit and how it changed some things in their life. Some for better, some for worse. Obviously, the virus was horrible, but there is some benefits that it brought around, such as cashless paying, such as working from home. These are things that weren't very common before that should stick around. And so we've seen lots of people moving out of these really big, expensive cities, such as Los Angeles and New York, into cities that were already good but weren't exactly didn't have a top tier economy, such as Colorado or into Denver, Phoenix, housing prices aren't as high. So people have started to realize that they can move into the suburbs and live just as comfortably. So there is still people moving to cities, like Miami's booming, and there's still cities are still around, but there has been a trend in people moving away from the big metropolises. That's all I have time for this week. Thank you for watching.